If she hadn't sidestepped to avoid the bony white cow nuzzling the peelings on the pavement, she would have been down it. Down through the circle, large enough for a human, certainly a child, scrabbling, gulping the foul blackness, paddling furiously to stay afloat, screaming for someone on the teeming ground above to hear her. But she was above, safe, looking down with chilled shock. Who would be its victim? She felt bound to stand guard protectively. The manhole sentinel, forever on duty. Her eyes searched the surrounding ground for the cover. Nothing. Her public health training in accident prevention flooded back. Who must she inform? She turned to an ice cream cart behind her. The elderly vendor was stacking his cornets. "Please, look, see," she beckoned, the determination in her voice surprising her.
His gaze followed her to the black circle. Yes, yes! His smiling complacency maddened her. "It's dangerous," she cried. A child!" His head waggled. "Who do I tell? Where do I go?" He stepped into the road, giving the straight-ahead arm wave, which she knew now, after 6 weeks in India, was a fudge for, "I'm not sure, but I'm really trying to be helpful." "Tourist office," he stated proudly. Thank you. Will you watch the hole?" Head waggle.
She ran down the dusty road, dodging auto rickshaws, motorbikes, Vespers, dogs and more cows. She knew where the tourist office was, of course. Her first port of call in any unknown place. She burst in, panting, explaining in a rush. There followed a great deal of muttering, puzzled expressions. "Environmental health?" she suggested, hopefully. They sent upstairs for Mr. Rana. Momentarily disconcerted by his striking Nepalese cheekbones, she spoke of her concern. "Municipality office. Engineering and Works Department?" he stated, inclining his head politely. "Oh, good!" She felt a tinge of triumph, as if the whole problem was already solved. "Where?" The young lady in the neat black suit led her outside and gave her clear directions. "You'll see the smart blue door and shuttered windows, madame."
She turned into Larden LA Road and saw it instantly, although the door was not quite as smart as the black-suited lady may have remembered it. Behind the heavy door, the lobby was still and silent. As instructed by a sign, she climbed the musty wooden stairs with a tinge of apprehension. She heard a scuffle when she reached the landing and froze. A man popped out of a cupboard. A man wearing royal blue slacks and a brill-creamed Elvis quiff. "Good morning. What is it you are wanting?" A weakness descended on her. "Could I sit down, please?" He rushed to place a chair behind her. She fumbled in her bag for her water bottle and drank thankfully. He waited for her story, which tumbled out in anxious fragments. Then he announced, "They have gone to the Goom." "Goom?" "Yes, the main officials, the men who can fix your manhole."
Victoria Constance folded her hands in her lap and becalmed herself. She knew where Goom was, 4 miles away. She had visited the monastery there. "I'll wait," she said. He disappeared without a word. She sat on a plastic chair on the landing. There was nothing to look at. Wooden walls and 3 doors. Oldness. British oldness. She looked at her watch. 4:50 p.m.
The lesser official popped out again. "They're not coming back today." "Tomorrow then?" "You could have an appointment." "What name?" He glanced at her hands. "Victoria." "Husband?" he asked, pen poised above his clipboard. Nicholas," she responded without thinking. "Miss Nicholas from England," he stated, writing energetically. She did not contradict him. 10:17 a.m. 10:17? That's an odd time, she thought. "Very busy department. Take care on the steep stairs, Miss Nicholas." She nearly fell down then, hearing Nick's name again.
She walked to her guest house on autopilot and climbed the 101 steps to her attic room with its pinewood walls and new floral curtains. The gladioli that Miss Rinchin had placed on the dresser welcoming her arrival 4 days ago was still fresh. Nick's camera would have been clicking. Latterly, he especially loved flowers. Nick, oh Nick. She clambered across the bed and slept for 2 hours.
By the lights of swinging lanterns, she stared unseeingly at the menu. Darkness fell at a stroke in India. "I'd like a mutton fry, please, with no rice," she requested, sticking to the known and safe. "And something green. Surprise me," she joked weakly. The eldest Rinchin's son wondered if he would ever understand the English. He bought a green bottle of Cobra beer. She sipped it, gazing at the empty street. Quiet now, as evening cloaked this hill station on a mountain ridge. "Cold beer, settle me," she whispered.
They had planned it forever, it seemed. The trip, always on their horizon. Every Tuesday night was India night. Their kitchen table covered with maps, lists, dates, their Bible, the lonely planet, India. They had done their sums, early retirement, the timing perfect, while they still had their health and vigour. Their 2 daughters independent, leading their own lives. Their parents, also independent and healthy. Health, that was the gremlin. There is a certain madness that comes over one at the mere sight of a map. Freya Stark, 20th century traveller. Now she was here, in the cool Himalayan foothills, away from the blistering heat of the plains and worrying about a manhole. Mrs. Rinchin emerged from the family quarters as Victoria started on her ascent of the stairs. "They'll sell your Ovaltine in the new grocery store," she declared with pride. "I've placed it in your cupboard. Sleep well."
Victoria was used to it by now, the cacophony of beeps and parps from the horns of Land Rovers rattling off at 4:30 a.m. Taking tourists to Tiger Hill to thrill at the dawn of the spectacle of Kanchenjunga, the world's 3rd highest mountain. It pulled her only slightly from sleep, after which she slumbered until the town reawakened. "I'll wear a dress," she informed the mirror. Twice, on the plains with her cropped hair and baggy trousers, she'd been addressed as Sir. This would not happen today. From her 2 dresses, she chose the long mint green shift scattered with purple and white sprigs of flowers. Suffragette colours, she realised. Emboldened, she descended the 101 steps.
The man with the Elvis quiff was waiting on the landing. "Excellent timing," he appraised her, ticking his clipboard with a flourish. No one else was waiting. 10 minutes later, he ushered her into a vast oak-panelled room. 2 men sat at a long, polished table, bookended with files that flapped in the breeze of a whirring fan. A 3rd man was arranging white lilies in a tall blue vase. He walked towards her, graciously indicating a chair. He then joined the others at the table. She faced 3. "I feel like an interviewee for a very serious job."
From left to right, Mr. M. Reddy, portly, bold. Mr. D. Patel, gaunt, side parting. Mr. N. Acharya, nicely slim, beetle cut. A large wooden plaque hung on the wall behind them, inscribed with the names of previous officials in the Darjeeling Engineering and Works Department. The tricolour national flag hung from a pole to her right. She stared at the navy blue wheel in its centre. 24 spokes. Must find out why. "Mrs. Nicholas from England." Mr. Reddy's voice boomed into her thoughts. "You have brought a problem to us."
She wondered if she should tell them her first name was Victoria. In view of that monarch's title of Empress of India, would that be helpful or a hindrance? The perfume from the lilies was pungent. It took her to a place in Yorkshire, once an old mill, now an art gallery, where lilies graced the books and the paintings. a sudden homesickness. "Miss Nicholas," the beetle's voice was encouraging. She looked at her suffragette colours, lifted her head and spoke clearly. "I am very worried about a missing manhole cover in Chaurasta, outside the Stardust restaurant. A child could fall down and drown." There, she'd said it. Mr. Patel wrote furiously in a ring binder. Mr. Reddy's chest expanded. "Our roads and buildings have not been properly maintained since your British ancestors left." Still holding a grudge then. Victoria was relieved she had not divulged her first name. The gentle beetle explained. "The Indians who come up from the plains steal the manhole covers. They are cast iron and they can sell them."
Victoria focused on this slim man with lilies crowning his hair. "Will you replace the cover? Please, I'm worried that a child may fall through." Although there was a huge clock with an invasive tock hanging on the wall, Mr. Reddy rose and consulted his fob watch with a pretentious flourish. He smiled thinly at Victoria and patted his girth. An image of him becoming stuck in the manhole circle flew before her eyes, and she had to quell her quivering cheeks. "It is noted for discussion. Please write your address." He gestured to Mr. Patel, who immediately ceased his purposeful writing and pushed his pen and binder across the desk. There followed polite handshaking and a beetle pleasantry. "Enjoy the remainder of your day, Miss Nicholas." Elvis slid in to escort her across the landing. A black hair had strayed from his quiff. Perhaps he's had a hectic morning, she thought, although there was not another soul around.
The heavy blue door closed behind her, and she was delivered back to the world. She wandered about listlessly, returning to the manhole, hanging about nearby, picking at lunch at the Stardust restaurant, which had tables outside, so she could watch the manhole. "Though how would I save someone? I've no idea," she groaned, visualising plastic tables and chairs scattering as she dashed madly between them. "I should write to Freya while I'm sitting here." It was her elder daughter's turn for the letter this week. Freya had been named after the doughty explorer, Freya Stark, although this daughter had never desired to leave England. "I'll wait until tomorrow. See what transpires with the manhole." The sealing and stamping of letters was such a palaver at the post office counter, with little saucers of wallpaper paste and tiny brushes on the counters. An expedition in itself, the internet did not yet have its global grasp.
Before climbing the stairs, she wandered to the back of the guest house to listen to the tree frogs chirruping in the dark bushes. What a country. She dawdled over breakfast, reluctant to go up to a Chaurasta, dreading the disappointment, which seemed inevitable. Trousers today. So much for the bold woman dress. Her dismay was more acute than she would have ever imagined. She walked all around Chaurasta, examining the pavements in detail, like an engineer. The gaping hole mocked her. She had to get away. What a fool I've been. To think they take notice of me. Stupid English arrogance.
She rushed up the hill to Windermere Hotel, with its unique spelling. Steeped in nostalgia from the Raj, it was Darjeeling's pride. She and Nick had planned her 50th birthday night here, dining whilst a pianist played on a grand piano and waiters in turbans glided around the tables. Today, she sat in a basket chair in the garden and took tea from a china cup, knowing the mountain giants were behind the gathering clouds. "Monsoon approaching," said a voice behind her. "Come, please." Mr. N. Acharya was beckoning, his beetle cut ruffled by the strengthening breeze. "I have been seeking you. Will you accompany me down the hill, Miss Nicholas?"
He walked at a pace that made talking impossible, although he was at pains to ensure her safety on the uneven road with its tumult of traffic. He slowed at Chaurasta and stopped outside the Stardust restaurant. As Victoria stared at the new manhole cover, the first warm drops of the monsoon plopped onto her face and mingled with her tears. "I've been seeking you," he repeated. "I wanted to see your face. I did not want to miss this moment. I'm glad you found me." This is indeed a special moment, she agreed, appreciating his pride. Should we have a cool beer to celebrate? He nodded towards the restaurant. My work is finished for the day. Green bottle cobras arrived as they sat at the window seat with a clear view of the rain-starred manhole cover. It looks invincible, she observed. Padlocked this time. Let's hope it remains, Mrs. Nicholas. It was time, thought Victoria, to tell him her name. It would be prudent, said Narab Acharya, to hurry to your guest house while the rain is still easing.
A black umbrella shot up above her head and she felt herself steered down Nehru Road, nimbly avoiding the new puddles. "Do you have plans for tomorrow?" he asked, on her guest house steps. "I must organise my transport for Seacombe. I thought I'd go there in the next few days, but nothing is definite. It's Saturday. I do not work. Have you been to the Tibetan Centre yet?"
Heeding his advice on wearing her walking boots, Victoria strode along a path high on a ridge, feeling half her age. The morning sun gleamed through tall pines. Nirav spoke of this place as they descended to the clearing of the refugees who had struggled across the Himalayan peaks in their quest for freedom. "This is their self-help centre," he said, with obvious respect. "Come meet Mrs. Norbu and watch her weaving." Victoria sat, fascinated by the skill of the little mountain lady who chatted blithely, genuinely interested in the life of Mrs. Victoria from England. Nirav wandered about the workshop within earshot. As Victoria rose to go, Mrs. Norbu pressed a small woven purse in purples, reds and greens into her hands. The knowing weaver looked up at Nirav, a message in her eyes. "Show her the schoolhouse on your way."
Victoria paused at the crest of the hill and looked back. The Tibetan centre was just out of sight. The experience had stirred her. "Ah, the caretaker is here. The door is open," exclaimed Nirav with delight. The schoolhouse smelt of wood and polish. It was Saturday. The children were on holiday. She removed her boots and padded along the corridor with tiny pictures above the coat pegs. There were 2 classrooms. The smaller had rows of square tables, painted red, blue and yellow, each having 1 wooden chair. She saw them, heard them, the infants and the juniors as they were known in the past, their excitement and enthusiasm, their liveliness.
She clasped the woven purse. The teacher's leaving soon. She's expecting a baby. Nirav stood in the doorway. "I heard you telling Miss Norbu you used to teach little ones." A question hung in the still air above the colourful tables.
"Dearest Freya, you will never believe the happenings of the past few days," Victoria wrote to her daughter that night.
She could not sleep. "There is one more person I must write to." She smoothed the blue airmail paper and picked up her pen.
"Dear Mr. Kumar, you called to read my gas meter in April. I am writing to thank you for our conversation and to tell you that India has restored the liveliness I almost lost.